Lately, it's all gone wrong for Syracuse men's basketball. A deflating loss in front of 30,000 at home to Duke before a blowout defeat at Clemson on Wednesday. Together, the first back-to-back 18-plus point losses for SU since 1968. But in the ACC, another opportunity is always around the corner. Now, SU travels to Pittsburgh to meet a Panthers squad sitting in second place in the ACC. Coming up, we've got everything you need to know about the old Big East foes. It's Cuse Countdown, and it starts right now. Welcome inside the CitrusTV studio. It's Cuse Countdown time. Thanks so much for being with us. Ian Nicholas, Chloe Smarz. I'm Jacob Morris talking Syracuse and Pittsburgh, meeting number 123 in PA. But before we do that, I'm sorry, Syracuse fans, we've got to cover the last game for the Orange. Syracuse traveled down to Clemson, South Carolina, and Ian, quite frankly, nothing went right.
The only thing that went right was Clemson's success from beyond the three-point line. I mean, they were a team that Syracuse expected to get burned by with the 2-3 zone, and Hunter Tyson had a field day. I mean, he was shooting it essentially from that big Paul logo at center court. There's one of his threes right there, and P.J. Hall bullied Jesse Edwards, who we'll talk about more in just a moment. Offensively, first 90-point game Syracuse has allowed all season, Chloe.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really think it'd get much worse for Syracuse, but they always seem to just exceed all of my expectations.
Yep.
It looked like in the first half, Syracuse was almost playing hot potato with basketball. They didn't care to rebound it at all. There was no efficiency. Since the tip-off, no one cared to even try. And like you were saying, Clemson did everything right in every category. Hunter Tyson completely destroyed this 2-3 zone with 29 points. No one stepped up for the Orange at all.
Chloe, Clemson might have done everything right, but Syracuse certainly did not. And somebody who was a main proponent of that, well, was Jesse Edwards. The center struggled once again, and head coach Jim Boeheim not shy about pointing that fact out.
We need Jesse. Jesse has trouble when people are physical with him. And this team was very physical, and he just was not able to get anything done. But
1 point, 4 rebounds for Jesse Edwards in the first half. The center did pick it up in the second half to save the stat line a bit, but it's now 2 straight games we've seen Jesse Edwards struggle. And Chloe, that's becoming a theme, especially against high-profile opponents.
Yeah, it's been hard to watch him play basketball, and it's really surprising considering how good he was in the beginning of the year. Throughout the first half in the Clemson game, he had 1.0 field goal attempts. We're talking about someone who preseason was projected to be an all-ACC first teamer. He looked lazy, looked weak around the rim. I'm really ripping into him, but I know he had 10 rebounds throughout to end the game, but it came late when it didn't even matter. Jesse Edwards hasn't been the player. It's been disappointing for him to watch, especially against 2 great teams in Duke and Clemson where they needed him to step up.
Reminded me a lot of Joe Girard's game against Duke a few days prior. The stat line looked great, but when you actually watch the game, you realize that nothing of what Jesse Edwards did came at a meaningful moment. And the biggest concern to me, you guys have talked about the 1 point he had in the first half, only had 1 shot attempt. It was really just depressing to see a guy who's got so much talent, who's played so well throughout the course of the season, back down to the physicality that P.J. Hall presented him in Clemson, and a few days earlier with Kyle Filipowski against Duke. He knows he can do it, but he hasn't been able to do it as of late.
You point out Duke. I think a lot of Syracuse fans were expecting Edwards to bounce back after he mustered only 5 points and 5 rebounds against the Blue Devils. Out of luck if you're an Orange fan, but we've been very negative. If you're looking for a positive, look at the freshman in the backcourt. Judah Mintz, 23 points, and Ian, it's now 8 straight games. The guard has been over 15 points. He's been fantastic, even if his running mates haven't been.
Well, here's a trend I like, Jacob. 3 straight games with a 3-pointer for Judah Mintz.
That's new, right?
You know what else is new? Making 4 threes in a game, which he did against Clemson, but nobody's going to talk about because they lost by 18. Judah Mintz is putting his draft stock to the moon right now because he has all the tricks in the trade. He can get to the hoop. He can play defense. He comes away with steals. What's been the one knock on him? Headed into last night's game, he had just 9 threes throughout ACC play. If he can continue to shoot like this over the final few games of the season, Chloe, NBA teams are going to start lining up.
And it's a bad thing for Syracuse because he's been the heartbeat of this team. I almost feel bad for him. in the beginning of the year, I think I knocked him a little bit for trying to play hero ball too much, but he kind of has to. I mean, no one else has stepped up for him offensively. He's done it all himself. And again, like I was saying for Syracuse, they want him here next year because who knows what this program's going to be like. But you said made some NBA-style threes. Looking like he's going to leave here next year.
Yeah. I don't think you could blame him because the thing that was an issue for Judah Mintz early on was the consistency, like you guys said. But now he's efficient. He's hitting the three. There's not much the guard can't do. We've hit Clemson. Let's go back to the last time Syracuse and Pittsburgh matched up. It was a game that was all over the place. It seemed like the Panthers were going to run away with it, up 20 points at one point in the second half. Syracuse came all the way back, but fell 84-82 late, Chloe.
Yeah, and the big thing that I think I took away from that game was up until that point, Syracuse was their three-point percentage on defense. They were allowing 32% of teams to shoot the three. Pitt walked in and said, screw that, I'm going to tear it apart. Nelly Cummings was 6 from 11 in that game. They shot 41% as a team. Syracuse could not even compete, even though later in the game, Pitt kind of went on a scoring drought. Positive, though, for Syracuse. Have been pretty negative so far. Malik Brown really stepped up for Syracuse in that game. He had 9 total rebounds. Jesse Edwards didn't play too well, but it was a very positive thing to see Malik Brown play well off the bench.
The final 5 minutes of that game, Chloe, was unbelievable. I mean, you mentioned the Logo Joes. The Logo Joe, the JG3 hit late in that ball game that put Syracuse within a point with just half a minute left was unreal. That was one of his better games of the season. It was one of Judah Mintz's best games of the season, but the freshman did turn it over in the waning moments, and ultimately Syracuse wasn't able to come out with an ACC win that they could really use right now because they don't have any quality wins, and Pitt would have been one of their best for sure.
And when the game happened in December, it appeared like it was a bit of a bad loss for Syracuse. But Pitt started 5-0 in conference play and ripped off a whole lot of games in a row. So maybe a missed opportunity there for Syracuse. We'll see what round 2 holds. But it's time for our first break here on Cuse Countdown. When we come back, we delve deeper into the Panthers. We meet the transfers. We talk Jeff Capel and company. Don't go anywhere. CC, back after this.
Hey Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry, I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Do clouds take naps?
I couldn't tell you.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look. Welcome back inside the CitrusTV studio. Jacob Morris, Ian Nicholas, and Chloe Smarz talking Syracuse and Pittsburgh, meeting number 123. And when talking the Panthers, guys, it's impossible not to notice that this is a completely different team from a season ago. The Panthers currently with 20 wins on the year. Impressive because the past 2 seasons alone, they've mustered just 21. They're tied for second in the ACC right now. The Panthers have come out of nowhere.
Well, thank goodness, Jacob, that they've come out of nowhere, because this was a team projected to finish second to last in the ACC standings because they were consistently bad over the last 4 seasons, and really didn't look good at the start of the year because John Hughley was missing a lot of time due to personal reasons. He averaged over 16 points a game last year, but one guy has really stepped up for his team outside of all their transfers. It's Jamarius Burton.
Yep.
He's in the conversation to be the ACC's Player of the Year because he's averaging over 16, 4, and 4, Chloe, on nearly 50% shooting as a guard. He, in his second year with Pitt, has taken the reins.
Yeah, Pitt's been a football school up until this point.
Yeah.
My brother knows it best. He goes to Pittsburgh, big ACC school in my household. But also, I mean, you got to talk about the obvious here. Jim Boeheim came out earlier in the year and later took back the fact that he said that Pitt bought this team. Regardless of what you want to say about the transfer portal, it's worked for Pitt. They've increased almost every stat line from a year ago, increased points per game by 10, increased points off turnovers. It's all worked for them, and you got to give credit to head coach Jeff Capel for that as well.
Capel's been fantastic. In the previous seasons, while Capel's been here, the Panthers have finished in ACC play 6-14 and tied for 11th in the conference. But Ian, Chloe, a big reason for this turnaround is all the fresh faces on the roster for Pittsburgh.
Jacob, it's a completely different Pitt team. 4 of their 5 starters are transfers, and the one that really sticks out is Blake Hinson. 2 years at Ole Miss, well, he averaged 9 points a game. Then 2 years on his couch, he didn't do a whole lot, although he was enrolled at Iowa State. He's doing a whole lot for Pitt now, and he's a super athletic freak. A 6'6", 240-pound power forward sounds more like football measurements because it is. He was recruited to play at Florida, Florida State, and Miami as an 8th grader, but with Pitt in the ACC, he's dominating on the hardwood.
Yeah, he's added a lot of consistency to this team. It's why head coach Jeff Capel came out and said that he has the best work ethic on this team because he could do it offensively and defensively. Leads the team in rebounds, second on the team in points with 15.6 per game. But also, though, in the last meeting between these two teams, he dropped 25 points, 13 boards. That's pretty impressive for him as well. We know another guy that can also shoot.
Who?
Nelly Cummings, someone that Syracuse fans should probably remember when he dropped 18 points a year ago when he was a member of the Colgate men's basketball team. But after that season, he went into the transfer portal and got some pretty big offers. Oklahoma, Florida, but decided to, hey, I'm going to go back home to my home state of PA, where he grew up watching the 05 to 09 greatness of Pitt basketball. Now he's doing that this year.
Yeah, and the greatness will continue because his brother just committed to the Panthers last week. But Cummings, he does it all. Yes, he's hit 12 threes in his last 2 games against Syracuse. But remember, he is Jeff Capel's point guard. He's averaged over 4 assists on the year and has over 5 assists in each of his last 2 games against Syracuse. He's finding the key shooters, and one of them is Marquette transfer Greg Elliott. Elliott, a guy who didn't play a whole lot in 5 years at Marquette, but last year with Shaka Smart was a part of a big turnaround, and this year he's done the exact same thing in Pitt's turnaround, Chloe.
Yeah, and he's become their big three-point threat. He's shooting 42% on the year, and at a point in time when sometimes this Pitt team struggles to get the ball in the middle, it just kind of seems like Greg Elliott is always making that big play. Although he had a little bit of a scoring slump throughout the season, came back against Louisville, 23 points. He's a guy for Syracuse. Circle him. You don't want him to beat you beyond the arc like all of these transfers we just mentioned, Ian.
Jacob, you got to circle all 3 of these transfers because they all add a little bit something different. They can all shoot the ball really well, and they all made an impact the last time Syracuse played Pitt.
The transfers have been fantastic all season long. They were fantastic against Syracuse as well. Capel, when asked about all the fresh faces, says what makes it work is there's no jealousy, there's no pointing fingers. All the guys really want to do is just win. And Pittsburgh's won a lot, and yet they haven't got a lot of respect in the national poll, at least in the media's eyes, yet to crack the top 25, which is a little bit odd considering the team is tied for 2nd in the ACC right now. And yet, if you ask Capel, you're not going to get some big reaction out of him. He says the Panthers just have to keep playing basketball.
I'm pretty sure they probably feel a certain way about it because as a player, you always want to feel like you're respected. The thing we've talked about since we've been together is just concentrate on us. Like, what can we control? The thing that we can control is us. How hard we play, how together we are, how unselfish we are. Those are the things. We can't worry about what the external world or the people that are in our sport or whoever's doing whatever thinks. We just focus on us. And
focusing on the Panthers has worked pretty well for Pittsburgh so far, and yet from a Panthers fan perspective, from a Panther player perspective, you have to think a ranking would mean a lot. I mean, this is a program that was a blue blood back in the 2000s, and Ian hasn't been ranked since 2016. We're talking 7 years. Top 25 would mean something, right?
It would, and it should be a ranked team because when you look at it from top to bottom with this resume, it is unbelievably impressive. Even if you consider the fact, guys, that this team is in the ACC because they're 7-3 on the road in the conference, which is the best in the conference. Yeah. And of all the teams currently ranked in the ACC, Pitt is 3-0. But the one thing that I think really helps this team with no egos, these are grown men. The average age of their starters are 23 years old, Chloe. That's older than the Oklahoma City Thunder in the NBA. They don't care about what they're ranked. They care about where they finish at the end of their collegiate careers with Pitt.
There has to be some frustration, though, Ian, because, I mean, part of it has to come down to the fact that the ACC is having a down year. It has to go off of the fact as well that I think the Pitt program over the past 6 years has been awful.
Yeah.
And you look at a team like Virginia that has the resume in the past few years, and that's why they're ranked, even though a Pitt team beat them. I look at when their last game this season, they play at Miami. I think if they win that game, not only are they top of the ACC, I think they automatically still get a bid into the NCAA tournament. I think that rises their stock a lot. I think they'll finally get the ranking after that game, but I think it's unlucky and it's undeserving because Pitt, I think, deserves to be ranked.
Chloe, it's a great point because when you look at a team like Clemson that was at the top of the ACC for a little bit, the Tigers kind of skated by not playing the ACC's top-tier competition. That's not the case for Pittsburgh. Like you said, took care of business against Virginia, took care of business against Miami already. Regardless, we've mentioned Jeff Capel's name. Ian, you got to give the head coach a whole lot of credit. Came over from Duke. It's been a real struggle on the hot seat, but boy, has he turned it around.
Capel was nothing but a winner before he got to this Pitt team. He was a slam dunk hire half a decade ago because he was a winner as a player at Duke and as Coach K's top assistant, and this team was consistently bad. They finished 13th in the ACC for 3 straight years. No signs of positives from this team, Chloe, but this year Capel has proven he's the right guy to be in charge in a Steel City.
And it's because everything we said before, he went into the transfer portal and it's been very successful for Syracuse. He's also, I think, a watch list coach of the year candidate.
Yeah.
It's a big turnaround. He was about to most likely be fired if Pitt didn't have a decent year this year. I mean, good for Pitt. They've been a decent program in the early 2000s, like Jacob said. It's a big turnaround for them.
Big time turnaround. I'm not sure you can find a bigger turnaround than hot seat to potential coach of the year, whether it's ACC or national for Jeff Capel. Pittsburgh's turned it around, Syracuse not so much. But it's time for another break here on Cuse Countdown. We've got a whole lot of fun coming up. Court is in session. We're talking Countdown Courtroom. We'll go through all of Syracuse's mistakes and positives this year and make a whole lot of rulings. Don't go anywhere.
Did you hear about the pony with a sore throat? He was a little horse. Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding. Why couldn't the Why was the basketball court all wet? Why? Because the players kept dribbling all over it. Where did cats go on vacation? New York.
Welcome back to Cuse Countdown. Thanks so much for being with us. Jacob Morris, Chloe Smarz, and Ian Nicholas. And we're about to have some fun. We have entered the Countdown Courtroom. We've got 2 lawyers here. They're going to play the prosecution and the defense. They're going to trade off opportunities. And I'm the judge. I'm going to make the final ruling. We're talking all things Syracuse basketball. Ian, I'll come to you first. I hear you're suing the team for negligence based on your client, Judah Mintz.
My client, Judah Mintz, what should I call you? Honorable? The Honorable Jacob Morris.
That'll work.
I mean, he has been putting this team on his back all season long, and especially as we've gotten into the heart of ACC play. I mean, this team tried to defame Judah Mintz early on in the season when, unfortunately, my client stumbled on the road in Miami and at home against North Carolina.
That's a couple times, no?
Look, he's recovered. This team has stumbled playing Duke and Clemson, but Judah Mintz has not. He's shooting threes now. He's adding to everything he's been so good at all season, and this team is failing its star freshman.
Ian, do you remember when Judah Mintz dropped 3 points against Miami?
I just told you it was a minor stumble.
Really?
Accidents happen.
That seems a
Well, do
little
you know
bit more
who
than minor.
stepped up?
Who? The team?
Jesse Edwards. I know I've been knocking him at the top of the show. He's been pretty good the middle part of the year.
Pretty good.
Pretty good, yeah. Against that game, he had 25 points when Judah Mintz was struggling.
But they lost, right? The team lost.
The team lost. But
I'm suing the team. I'm not suing Jesse Edwards. I have nothing against the Dutchman.
Well, during...
Let the defense speak.
Fine. Should we handshake?
No, not yet.
Okay, fair.
Wait
fair.
till the point's over.
Well, he dropped 27 points against Boston College. You know what that game was? A win. He had 12 rebounds against Florida State. Win.
Bad team.
I'm saying, obviously, Judah Mintz is the heartbeat of the team, but when Judah Mintz was not playing good this season, other players had to step up around him, and Jesse Edwards is one of them that was able to do that. So sure, yeah, Judah Mintz might go to the draft, might do whatever he wants, but the team has been helping him, maybe not late in these past 2 games, but holistically, looking at the season, he didn't have a fast start to this year.
Holistically, this team wasn't winning at the start of the season.
Yeah, that's a good point too, Ian. But
I've come to my conclusion.
Yeah, it's not,
Important to note for the audience, by the way, the production crew didn't trust me with a gavel. However, just pretend I'm holding one. I've come to my decision. Listen, I know Judah Mintz has been fantastic this season.
He has been.
But he has had turnover after turnover after turnover at late points in games. I'm giving the defense the win right here.
By that.
Yeah, the team does not get sued. It is what it is. But we move on. You get to play defense now. You happy about that?
I'm ready.
All right.
I'm locked in.
We move on. Chloe is accusing Joe Girard III for money laundering. You're going to have to walk me and the audience through this one.
There is probably no one else in college basketball that can turn on the three-pointing ability when the game doesn't matter like Joe Girard.
When the game doesn't matter.
Doesn't
What do you
matter.
mean? What do you mean?
We look at the game against Duke. He dropped 20 points, but that game was over in the first half. You even look what happened against Clemson. He dropped, 11 points, but the game was over. He hasn't done much for this team. Out of tip-off, he has no impact. So I don't know. Logo Joe, irrelevant.
Look, at the beginning of that Duke game, he made a great 3 early on in the game.
Unfortunately,
they weren't down by too much at that point. He really did his best to try to keep his team in that game early. How about that game against Georgia Tech on the road? Tough place to win in Atlanta in the ATL. And he had over 25 points. My man Joe Girard, he has gone through a lot this season. A lot of hardships, a lot of haters, but consistently, he's hit 38% of his threes. So I got to think that some of those threes are happening at meaningful parts in the game.
A quick rebuttal.
If it's any other team in Division I college basketball, Joe's sitting on the bench. He's a backup guard besides Syracuse.
He's 6th man of the year if he's sitting on the bench.
I have come to my decision. All right.
Here we go.
And as we both know, or as we all know, I'm always right.
No?
I'm going to roll with Ian here.
There we go.
What I will say is I'll give you a little bit of critique as an up-and-coming lawyer. Maybe don't pull out the game against Georgia Tech when he's playing one of the worst ACC
It's tough to
teams.
win on the road in the ACC.
You got your point. Be happy. We're tied up 1-1. Once again, you're trading roles. You're back on the offensive. Do you like that better?
I'm not a great shooter, but I'm going to score here.
You're accusing Chris Bell for identity theft for your client, Justin Taylor. You have the floor.
My client, Justin Taylor, unfortunately plays the same position that Chris Bell does. There's just one thing.
What's
Justin Taylor plays the position better than Chris Bell. But one starts every night, Chris Bell. The other sits on the bench until the game is really over and then comes in and has to force up bad shots. And he's really not put in his position to succeed, even though he's the better player. Why? He's built better. He plays better in this wretched 2-3 zone that my client shouldn't be playing in, but he succeeds in playing in the zone. And he's shooting over 38% from distance. He's not as hot and cold as Chris Bell. And that's why he's stolen his role and really stolen his identity on this team as an impact freshman.
Sure, Chris Bell has his hot and cold moments, Ian. But when he's hot, I think he's way better than Justin Taylor could ever be.
Dependability is the #1 part of this game.
You had the stand, the defense may speak.
There's a reason why Chris Bell is on this court, and it's for the simple reason, the fact that when, like I said, Joe Girard is shooting meaningless points, Chris Bell is your next three-point option. He can score so easily when he's hot. I know the big knock on his game is that he doesn't have any defense. Well, he had that in a game against Florida State. He collected 12 rebounds in that game as well. Eventually, I think it's all going to click for him. His game does have to come together. But I think he needs another year, and maybe next year I think Chris Bell can be a great asset to this team. But this season, Chris Bell's done enough.
My argument is in the present. And in the present, Justin Taylor is the man.
We both had the stand here. Chloe, I'm going to give you some advice.
Yeah, I know.
Probably don't admit that your arguments failed to the jury and the judge. I'm going to roll with Ian as a result. Justin Taylor has done everything that Chris Bell has done, but he's done it better. For those counting at home, 2 points to 1. We don't like ties here on Cuse Countdown in the Countdown courtroom, so we're going to roll this one's worth 2 points. All right?
What?
Chloe, you're back.
Seems illegal.
I make the rules, you do not. All right? I make the legal rules as well. Chloe, back on the offensive.
Yep.
This is a big one. You're suing Syracuse basketball for malpractice. Your client, SU fans.
I mean, I feel bad for anyone that has bought season tickets this year.
No.
I mean, we've sold out games. This team has disappointed everybody. I mean, I think before the season started, I don't think personally didn't think that this team was going to make the NCAA tournament. There were a lot of question marks. Didn't know how the recruits were going to turn out. But I mean, at least I thought there would be some entertaining games, you know? No, Ian, there's been really nothing down to the wire that I'm like, oh my God, Syracuse basketball is phenomenal. They've had an off year. Duke, Clemson, embarrassing, hard to watch. I think during the Clemson game, I started rooting for Clemson. I'm not even going to lie to you, even though we go to Syracuse. But the coaching style has yet to evolve. I know some people in Syracuse want a certain someone to get out. I think it might be time because this program is on a downward spiral.
Look, when you go to the JMA Wireless Dome and you want to see a big game, you want to see the big stars, they're always in the Dome regardless of the result. Whether it's Buffalo Bills stars,
what does that have to do?
Whether it's the Greek Freak or Pete Davidson, the product might not be perfect, but you said the fans, correct? You said the fans are suing this team.
The fans are there for basketball.
The fans are there for a show. Sports are entertainment. It's just a fact, and it's always entertaining when Adam Weitzman brings in a special guest.
I've come to my decision. Folks, for all of you at home, I was hoping that this would be a good argument, but he just argued people coming to the Dome and not the product on the floor. Listen, Syracuse about to miss the postseason for the back-to-back seasons for the first time in 53 years. Chloe takes it.
Thank you.
You
are the
can't
better lawyer
handle the
for now.
truth.
There it is. We were waiting for it. Regardless, unfortunately, all good things come to an end. It's time for our last break here on Cuse Countdown. When we come back, we'll talk predictions as well as the final countdown. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back inside the CitrusTV studio. Cuse Countdown wrapping up shop, unfortunately. Ian Nicholas, Chloe Smarz, and Jacob Morris taking you home. We've talked a lot about Syracuse and Pittsburgh. Quite frankly, we've talked about a whole lot of negatives for Syracuse basketball. It's time to enter the final countdown. You see what we did there? Cuse Countdown, the final countdown.
I'll take credit for that.
Ian, you should. As the season winds down, what are you looking for from Syracuse basketball to have a, we'll say, positive twist heading into the ACC tournament?
I'm looking for two players that are going to be a part of this team moving forward to play a little bit more. Quadir Copeland, who's a freshman and an exciting player who really energizes this team, and Munir Hima. We live in a reality where he's going to be the starting center next year if Jesse Edwards doesn't come back. Jim Boeheim's got to give him a chance to really develop.
Yeah, I think it's just honestly competing. And I talked about it before, getting some entertaining games for these fans to watch because it's been ugly as of late. Give some fans some hope that next season certain players are going to step up the mid-range of this team. Brown, Bell, Taylor, can they be a spark plug? I think that's the biggest question for the Syracuse team next year.
A lot of Syracuse fans might feel like the season is over, but you're exactly right. The future is still on the floor. Have to see a little bit more from the freshmen going forward. But wrapping up shop, heading back to Syracuse and Pittsburgh. Ian, do the Orange get it done? Do the Orange pull the upset and get a quad one victory?
We're going to stay negative here, Jacob.
All right, I'm
There's
surprised.
no way on senior day against one of the most senior starting lineups in all of college basketball, Pitt's going to lose. Nelly Cumming, the hometown kid's probably going to have 30 points in an 85-65 final score. A 20 bomb is going to occur in the Oakland Zoo.
Yeah, I'm going with you, Ian. I have Pitt. It's a sellout crowd in the Oakland Zoo, and it's going to be rowdy. I don't think Syracuse is going to be able to silence that crowd on the road. They haven't done it all season. I don't think they're going to be able to defend the three as well. it's going to be, I think, an ugly one for Syracuse.
It's been ugly as of late for Syracuse. The Orange heading down to match up with Pittsburgh in meeting number 123, trying to avoid another 3-game losing streak. Both the analysts say 3-game losing streak on the way for Syracuse. But that's all the time we have. For Ian Nicholas and Chloe Smarz, I'm Jacob Morris saying so long and thank you so much.